The movie begins by showing a view of a beach. Then a group of teenagers is seen partying on the shore at night. In the middle of the party, a guy sets a rule. No one is allowed to use their phone at all. He collects everyone's phones and locks them in the trunk of a car. Not long after, two guys arrive carrying a large, slimy chunk of something. They say they found the strange object not far from the shore. Without realizing it, this bizarre thing will bring disaster upon them. The next morning, a girl named Kaylee is the first to wake up. Shortly after, a guy named Mitch also wakes up. Kaylee and Mitch, who are at the lifeguard post, see their friends still asleep inside a car. Kaylee also notices her boyfriend Jonah sleeping next to her friend Chanda. In other words, Jonah has cheated on Kaylee with her own friend Chanda. Meanwhile, a guy named Vance and his girlfriend Ronnie also wake up in the back seat. A girl named Marcia, on the other hand, wakes up on a beach chair. On the other side, Kaylee sees a seabird looking for food. Suddenly, the bird gets sucked into the sand. Marcia, who has just woken up, tries to get off her chair. Seeing this, Kaylee shouts at her not to step on the sand. But unfortunately, Marcia has already set foot on it. Instantly, her feet feel extremely heavy, and she can't lift them at all. Her friends, seeing Marcia in danger, panic and are confused about what's happening. At that moment, Vance tries to help her. He jumps out of the car, but immediately his feet feel just as heavy, and he collapses. He calls for help. His face is pressed against the sand and something starts eating away at him. Moments later, both Vance and Marcia are swallowed by the sand. Seeing their friends die in an instant, the group plans to call the police. However, they quickly realize that all their phones were collected and locked in the car trunk. The person who made the rule is blamed for the situation. To make matters worse, they had unknowingly snuck onto a beach that had actually been closed due to water contamination. Jonah, who is inside the car, tries to start the engine. But it turns out that the car battery is dead and they forgot to bring a spare. As a result, the car is completely immobile. Curious about the creature lurking beneath the sand, Kaylee decides to lure it out using her hand. Sure enough, the strange creature appears. It looks like hair and is incredibly thin. Meanwhile, their friend Gilbert finally wakes up, only to find himself trapped inside a trash can. He tries to escape by rocking the trash can back and forth. Immediately, his friends scream, "Don't move at all." Gilbert freezes as soon as they tell him that something is lurking in the sand. After learning that two of their friends died because of it, he has no choice but to stay put inside the trash can. Time passes and all they can do is wait, hoping that someone will come and discover them. Feeling hopeless, Ronnie writes a letter to her mother in case she doesn't survive. With no food or water, they can only endure the uncertainty. Then they realize that everyone else who attended the party last night is gone, swallowed by the sand. In other words, only the 6 of them remain on this beach. Not far from where they are, Kaylee notices that the large chunk they found last night has now split open. Ronnie realizes that the chunk looks like a hatched egg. This means that the strange creature beneath the sand most likely came from it. Thinking back, the water at this beach had already been contaminated, and pollution could have led to the creation of an entirely new, unknown creature. Jonah then comes up with a plan to retrieve Marcia's bag. Conveniently, there are 2 surfboards behind the car that he can use to move across the sand. He carefully places them down one by one to get closer to the chair. However, the surfboards keep shifting, making it harder for him to move forward. Jonah struggles to keep his body from touching the sand, but the parasites suddenly emerge from below and latch onto his stomach. Luckily, he manages to endure the pain and leaps onto the chair. However, his stomach is now wounded from the bite. Jonah starts looking sick. His face turns pale. He describes the pain as if he had been stung by 1,000 jellyfish. Fighting through the pain, Jonah rummages through Marcia's bag and finds several canned drinks. Finally, each of them gets a sip of water. As Jonah tosses a drink toward Mitch, he is suddenly struck by an intense wave of pain. The sudden reaction startles Mitch, causing the wooden railing on the side of the lifeguard post to loosen. Jonah's stomach wound also worsens. It begins to fester. He can only lie on the chair, struggling to endure the agony. The 5 of them grew even more desperate. How could they possibly survive in this place? Like it or not, they had to retrieve the phones locked in the car trunk. Ronnie came up with a plan to open the trunk while standing on the car's bumper. Just as the trunk started to open, a patrol car suddenly arrived, honking repeatedly. Startled, Ronnie slipped and her right hand got caught in the trunk. The man driving the patrol car turned out to be the lifeguard for this beach. He asked them what they were doing in a restricted area. Kaylee quickly told him that something was lurking beneath the sand. However, the lifeguard was skeptical and stepped out of his vehicle. Strangely, the parasites in the sand didn't harm his feet. They all wondered, why could he walk on the sand without getting hurt? Since nothing happened to him, the lifeguard became even more doubtful of their claims. Mitch then concluded that the parasites weren't attacking the man because he was wearing leather shoes. Right then, the lifeguard ordered Kaylee and Mitch to come down to him. But of course, neither of them wanted to obey. Growing suspicious, the lifeguard pulled out a can of pepper spray and threatened them. But in an unfortunate turn of events, his car keys suddenly fell onto the sand. Taking a risk, he bent down to grab his keys. The moment his hand touched the sand, he immediately felt something strange. His hand became heavy, completely immobile. Kaylee quickly told him to use the pepper spray. Desperately, he sprayed it directly at the parasites emerging from the sand. But it was too late. Half of his arm was already beyond saving. Blood gushed out as his limb was severed. Moments later, he collapsed and was instantly sucked into the sand. Seeing this horrifying scene, Mitch realized how crucial footwear was. He planned to wrap his feet in towels and make a run for it. Chanda tossed a towel toward Mitch. Unfortunately, as he moved, he lost his balance. The loosened wooden railing gave way and he fell. He lay on the sand as the parasites began devouring him. Slowly, his arms and legs started sinking into the ground. His friends could only watch in horror, completely helpless. Amidst the panic, Kaylee suddenly had a brilliant idea. She handed a wooden plank from the lifeguard post to Chanda, who was on top of the car. Then Kaylee jumped from the lifeguard tower onto the car. Together, she and Chanda helped free Ronnie's trapped finger. At last, they managed to pull Ronnie out and quickly wrapped her injured finger with a thick towel. Meanwhile, Gilbert, still trapped inside the trash can, was starting to bleed badly from his wounds. Chanda then placed the wooden plank as a bridge to reach Jonah's chair. Slowly, she crossed over, carefully maintaining her balance. Fortunately, she made it to the chair safely, followed by Kaylee. But when it was Ronnie's turn, she slipped and fell onto the sand. In an instant, the parasites swallowed her whole, dragging her down without giving her a chance to fight back. Unbeknownst to them, the parasites had also begun creeping into the trash can where Gilbert was trapped. Chanda then had an idea, to reach the patrol car by using the same method Mitch had suggested earlier. She wrapped her feet with towels and sprinted toward the patrol car. Thankfully, she climbed onto it without getting hurt. But suddenly, Gilbert started coughing up blood. The parasites had already made the trash can their home, creeping in from the bottom. In mere moments, Gilbert was sucked into the sand, disappearing without a trace. But it wasn't over yet. Just when Chanda thought she was safe, she slipped and hit her head hard, knocking herself unconscious. Kaylee and Jonah had no choice but to wait until Chanda woke up. As night fell, Chanda finally regained consciousness. When she looked around, she spotted a lifeboat on top of the patrol car. Without hesitation, Chanda quickly unwrapped and inflated the lifeboat. She then climbed down onto the boat to pick up Kaylee and Jonah. One by one, they got onto the lifeboat and made their way into the patrol car. Unfortunately, Jonah's condition worsened. In the end, he died inside the patrol car. Now, only Kaylee and Chanda remained. But they were powerless as neither of them knew how to drive the car. The next morning, a man suddenly appeared, peering through the car window and waking them up. Strangely, the man was able to stand on the sand without being affected by the parasites. In the end, Kaylee and Chanda stepped out of the car and walked across the sand without harm, finally leaving behind the nightmare of that beach. At the end of the film, we see a swarm of parasites swimming toward another beach. In other words, this disaster is far from over. From all the horrifying events, only Kaylee and Chanda survived. What do you think about this movie? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss daily uploads on this channel. See you in the next video.